Welcome to another episode of Real Talk No Filter. This is your host, David, and I have Robert with that lovely tie of his. Robert, you reached out and you have a lot to say, which I love. You mentioned that you created a children's book and you want to give back to the community. So I feel like what you want to really portray as a human being is your willingness to serve your community. That's one thing I really took based off our pre-interview conversation, is that you're a man of servitude. So I do not want to ruin your experience and what you want to accomplish in this world. So Robert, please go ahead.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, David. And I really look forward to our conversation here tonight. What I wanted to I think I have a message, so I wanted to sort of go through that message. I graduated from high school and college in Colorado. Went to medical school in Colorado. Did my pediatric training at Duke in North Carolina. Did a genetics fellowship, so I'm board certified in both pediatrics and genetics. And moved to Greenwood, South Carolina, to be the best darn doctor I could be, and got very much involved in all the various things I could with medicine. But, oh golly gee, about 14, 15 years into my practice, I realized I wasn't really paying back to my community like I should be. At the same time, my first marriage had dissolved, and I don't think it was necessarily because of my work. There were a variety of other factors. So now I find myself really sort of pondering, what am I doing? What can I do to do better? And so in 1993, I heard a speaker. He called himself a healthcare futurist. I wasn't sure what that was, but I wanted to hear him talk. And he said, for anything that happens in your community, these 12 words: I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource. Mm-hmm. Now, that took me a long time to internalize that and to realize sort of what it meant. At least my interpretation was, for anything that happens in the community, I am the problem. It has to be, I have to take ownership in that. It's not their drug problem. It's not their teenage pregnancy problem. It's not their whatever problem. It's got to be mine, because I need to be part of the solution. And to do that, I need to devote my resources to it. So it took me a while to sort of figure out what to do. So I went to some of the community leaders and I said, put me in. I want to do good things. And I got involved, and I thought I was doing pretty good things. And then 1999, April 20th, Columbine. 2 teenagers walked into a high school, killed 13 people, and killed themselves. That really had a profound effect on me. And I asked myself, what have I done to help that from not happening? And the answer was not enough. And then I asked myself, could it happen in my community? And the answer was yes. So I put pencil to paper. Back then we used to do that, and wrote an op-ed piece to the local newspaper, sort of about what each of us could do to make a difference. And I articulated at that time what I called the 5 steps to community improvement. 1, learn to be the best parent you can be. 2, get involved. 3, stay involved, which is different than getting involved. Mm-hmm. 4, love for others. And 5, forgiveness. Now, those seem sort of intuitive, but they really, I really wanted to sort of flesh those out. And so the next 12, 13 years, I wrote over 160 op-ed articles for the local newspaper about each of those. Wow. And as I did that, I very much evolved in terms of my understanding about myself. Because it really is, I don't think it's till you put your own pencil to paper and make a commitment that when you really start to understand what you're capable of doing or need a swift kick in the pants to do. And as I would write some of these articles, I would give them to my wife to read before I'd send them to the newspaper. And she'd sometimes go, oh, I don't know, it sounds a little preachy to me. Probably pastors have the same problem when they write sermons. But I said, I don't understand. You don't understand who I'm preaching to. And she said, who? I said, me. these are action steps for me. And if they make sense to anybody else, great. And so the newspaper printed them. And so I started getting all these things. And I had, 160 articles. And I sent them to people around the country. And at around 2010, people said, you need to turn this into a book. So I self-published a book at that point called My Children's Children, Raising Young Citizens in the Age of Columbine. Talking about the 5 steps, learning to be the best parents you can be in many ways is a collective experience, but it's also an individual experience. Everybody has their own aptitude. As a physician, I would like to say, this is what you need to do, but I recognize that some people can and some people can't. So I need to work with them so I can enable them, empower them to become the best parent they can be. Not the best parent overall. I'm not the best parent overall. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And then I looked at how can we get involved, and then tried to understand the difference between getting involved and staying involved. And then again, one of the most obvious ones is love for others, because that's sort of intuitive, but we seem to not be doing that very well right now in our country. And then the toughest one, and this has been part of my journey, is forgiveness. When your 3-year-old child, when your 4-year-old child bops your 2-year-old child and you say, tell them you're sorry, you're asking for them to exhibit a form of, forgiveness, apology. That's very different than what you would expect somebody at 10 years of age, 20 years of age, 30 years of age, 50, 70 years of age. And so if we don't evolve in terms of our understanding of forgiveness, we've got a real problem. And so I took all those and put them into this book, because what I think one of the major problems we have, again, my personal bias, is that we've lost track of being citizens. Citizens take care of each other. Citizenship is the bedrock of American democracy. And that's what's being eroded these days, because citizens care for each other. Citizens are empathetic toward each other. Citizens do what they can to make sure that we lift each other up. And so that's sort of my 5 steps to community improvement, were really sort of what I considered a guide to citizenship.
I love what you just said, and I truly believe that. And we are all citizens of the world when you really think about it. And we have to, we've always heard that expression, treat each other like we want to be treated. And we kind of forget those things because we're so busy trying to be better than each other that we forget to take care of each other. And that's what truly is, and the Bible references, and everyone says it, it's really is love thy neighbor. It's not the people that are right beside you, it's the community. It's those that you interact with. Those are your neighbors. And again, you mentioned Columbine, and you mentioned also the things that you meant, the 12 words that he mentioned about that. And I understand those concepts because I believe that I'm not a parent, but as parents in general, we have to get involved and stay involved in your children's lives. And therefore we could, but at the same time, we have to have that correct mindset though, to ensure that we're installing love, that we're installing certain behaviors within them. Therefore, they actually could perceive the world as a citizen world versus a you versus them world. And I think that is truly what is missing today. But
right.
Continue though.
And we can, I said that person said, I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource. We could change the pronoun. We are the problem, we are the solution, we are the resource. And so it really should be that way. And I remember, it's the old African proverb, it takes a village. And I remember when Hillary Clinton wrote a book and put that out. It takes a village, and everyone was just saying, "Oh, baloney! It doesn't take a village." And I was going, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with us?" But it's but again, what sort of as I've been on this journey, one of the biggest things again to me is forgiveness. And I don't know if you've ever read the book by Mitch Albom called Tuesdays with Maury.
No.
Mitch Albom was a reporter, sports reporter for the Detroit Free Press. Sort of found himself after college, sort of wandering, sort of misguided in his estimation. He found out that one of his favorite college professors was dying with Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. So we made a special trip to go see him. And the college professor could realize that he indeed was losing his moral compass and was losing his way. He said, "Why don't you come visit me every Tuesday?" So we went every Tuesday. And so he got sort of life lessons from Maury every Tuesday. But one of the ones that I take away from that book is the whole issue of forgiveness. And it's sort of to me, it's a 3-step process. You got to forgive yourself first, then forgive others, and do it now. And because he talks about in the book, Maury Schwartz, one of his childhood friends, they had a falling out. And before they could reconcile, the fellow died. And he felt just horrible that it happened. So he realized he needed to expedite this process, forgive himself, forgive others, and do it now. Now, that's sort of simplistic because there are certain situations where it's not going to be that easy. And I've read several books about the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, and the Reconciliation Commission, much like what they had in South Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, getting the people that actually killed family members together with the other folks to try to come up with some process that could lead to forgiveness and moving forward. Well, that took a long time to happen, and that's understandable. But the point is to be on the journey, and that's one of the big things I'm working on is forgiveness in my life, is trying to understand that, because if we're ever going to reconcile, how we can work together, without forgiveness, there is no reconciliation.
Yep.
So after I had that book, which I was quite proud of, and again, that's My Children's Children, Raising Young Citizens in the Age of Columbine, I thought, well, we really should make a children's book with this. So I just sort of fortuitously found a children's book illustrator that went to my college, cold emailed her and said, "Would you be willing to illustrate a book?" And so we put that out, and it's called All About Children. Now, this is a very unusual children's book because it's a series of 13 illustrations that have messages in them. So there's no storyline that goes through those 13 illustrations, but it's what each of us in families can be doing. For example, showing children shaking hands after a Little League baseball game, going to the senior center, going to visit a military cemetery, going to the animal shelter, working in a community garden, watching TV reading in the living room with the TV off, eating dinner as family. And so the book has those illustrations and has some simple text that school-age children could probably read, has some text that parents could hopefully take away the message from, and then just has pictures. And so they could say, "Where's the green pumpkin?" or "Where's the green ball?" or that sort of thing. So it's designed to be a book of discovery. I call it Goodnight Moon with a Message, but I was really, really proud of that book, and so that we did that book too.
Based off of what I'm hearing for you, what is your message to children and parents right now?
Well, we really need to be watching out and helping each other. Let me go right to to the elephant in the room, as a pediatrician, I don't understand how everyone won't take the COVID vaccine. Because I mean, nothing is perfect. Nothing is going to solve all of our things, but we know that this illness is quite severe. We know that this new Delta variant is even more severe. And the only way out of this pandemic is for as many people to be vaccinated as possible. Until we can do that, us pediatricians feel quite strongly that children should go to school, but they have to be protected. And protection for children in school is wearing a mask. So the folks that say, you know, you're not going to make my child wear a mask, I don't understand. I really don't understand. I mean, I read a comment tonight where somebody said, I've never seen parents fight so hard to let their children get sick. So it's, I mean, so if you really care about others, you'll do what you can to help protect them. We do that with other vaccines. And we do that with, you know, mandating that people have to have driver's license, and in car seats and use seat belts and all those other things, because we want everyone to try to be healthy and have a reasonable life. So my message is to be a good citizen. And that's a journey. I mean, you can't flip that switch. And that sort of takes me then to I'll skip over my third book, because that was more of a scientific book. That was, and my last book is what's called Conscious Parenting Using the Parental Awareness Threshold. And so let me give you a little bit of background to that. When I took a new job, the last 7 years, I've retired in December, after 44 years in medicine. When I took that new job, they had a leadership training program that talked about conscious leadership. And for when you're in a meeting, if you're trying to be a leader, you just need to be conscious of where you are. And so I'll give you an example. You're in the 3 o'clock meeting and you're saying, to yourself, this is the worst meeting I have ever been in. When is this thing going to be over? I am so tired. What am I going to do tonight? And if you're conscious about it, you realize that that's what you're doing. And that might be, you know, what's going to get you through this. But it also might be, okay, I'm really not engaged. I really do not like what's going on here. How can I change what I'm doing to be more engaged, to listen more, and to be more a part of what's going on? Instead of just sitting back and moaning and groaning about what's happening, how can I be proactive? So they talk about this line, and when you're above the line, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn. When you're below the line, you're closed, you're defensive, and you're always right. And as humans, we're going to be above and below the line. I mean, that's just
our nature.
And so the point is being conscious of it. And so I've sort of said, well, that makes sense for parenting. This line for me is what I call the parental awareness threshold. When you're above the threshold, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn, you're listening to your child, you're trying to understand how you can do better, instead of just below the threshold and say, you know, I'm right, I'm the parent, I told you so, go to your room. Now that, depending on the circumstances, some of that might be appropriate. But I think what you need to do is just be conscious of what you were doing, because people, you know, all of us have a lot of things that are happening every day, and we might get home as a parent or as a mate, and all the baggage we brought home from the day, we just pop off and explode at something that we shouldn't. And you know, if we could recognize, if we're conscious of that, then we could analyze that, and if appropriate, ask for forgiveness, and move forward, or change. And sometimes you're going to realize days later, you go, you know, that did not go well several days ago. And what can I do better? So it's helpful to have a coach in some way, shape, or form, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your a trusted friend, whether that's a sibling, whether that's your own parent or whatever, to sort of to talk about that and to see what you can do. So I think it's very helpful. And I'll give you an example. One night we had a situation here at the house where my son did something that really upset me, and I yelled at him. He just melted into a puddle of tears. And my wife got mad at me for yelling at him. And then we went into that typical family mode where nobody talks, where everyone just sort of walks past each other until it's time for bed. And so it was time for bed. And I laid down with my son. I said, son, I am so sorry about what happened tonight. Dad was wrong. I was very wrong. You did something that I didn't like, but my response was totally inappropriate. And I really am sorry. And, we're all on the same team. I love you. And I want to do better going forward. And he said, Dad, would you be quiet? I said, why? He said, I hate it when you're nice. So, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I say that I say that as an example of a positive time I use the principles of conscious parenting. Now, I've screwed up plenty other times, and I will continue to do so, but I'd like to think I do less of that than I used to do. So, and again, the whole principle of conscious parenting is whether you're trying to figure out how to deal with your fussy baby that's 5 months old, or your 2-year-old that's having a temper tantrum, or your 5-year-old that won't go to school, or your 10-year-old that's starts to realize that they're getting near teenage years and they shouldn't like their parents, or whether they're teenagers and forget you, mom and dad. The whole point is understanding where you are and where they are. Every encounter will not go well. That's a given, and not even as a parent. It's out in the real world. Certainly is, and I'd like to think that everyone I have seen in the past as a pediatrician feels that I've done very well. And I realize in retrospect, some of my encounters, I did not do well. I mean, I've driven home sometimes at night and go, you really did not do well with that family. And sometimes I've called them back and apologized because I realized that I just need to do better. But the whole point of then is to become a better citizen, to figure out how to take care of each other. And so you want to do it on an individual level, you want to do it on an interpersonal level, and on a social level. Here in the South, we've got all sorts of issues. The Confederate flag, and part of the forgiveness issue for me is so many people say, wasn't me, I didn't do it. And they're right, but my retort is it was us. And we need to figure out how to do better, and how to reconcile, how to remove those symbols that are so abhorrent, and how to do better and take better ownership. An example, the American Medical Association, which is the group of doctors in the country, used to, and I don't know when they stopped, prohibit African-American doctors from joining. And hence there was an organization called the National Medical Association, which was for African-American physicians. They probably stopped during the civil rights era, but I don't know specifically. But about 10 years ago, the American Medical Association looked back, did serious retrospective on themselves, and said, we need to issue a group apology. We need to do better. And again, recognizing, well, wasn't me, but it was us. Because I think what that does is that helps you reset your moral compass. Yes, you can't change what happened, but you can learn from what happened. And if that helps you reset your moral compass, that is a world of difference going forward.
I love what you're saying. I love that word. I just wrote down is that moral compass, because I believe that we all have it, but none of us not a lot of us look at it, because our moral compass is what guides us to humanity. You mentioned, like, I'm writing down, I love using the word, and probably a lot of my viewers hate me saying this, but a lot of golden nuggets is what I'm hearing from you, and I love it. You keep mentioning that word forgiveness. Have you ever been in a situation where it was hard to forgive? And if so, what did you do? Or have you forgiven?
Yeah. I've written several blogs on this on my website. My father was an alcoholic. So my parents divorced when I was 9. But my father was not abusive to me, but verbally abusive to my mother. I don't think he was physically abusive, but he would throw things. And when he was inebriated, it was an ugly scene. As a matter of fact, one night we were driving home from somewhere. It was just my brother and I and my father. We were on a country road in Illinois. And I'm surprised I'm still alive here today, because we were on the other side of the road going at somebody when my brother finally screamed, and he corrected that. When my father died early. Father died when I was about 30. He was in his late 50s because of the ravages of alcohol and smoking. Now, I think in retrospect, I think I haven't given him his proper due, because I think in retrospect, a lot of his problem was from World War II. We did not recognize post-traumatic stress disorder in the folks returning from World War II now, much like we can now. And I think and in retrospect, I think that was quite a problem for him, because I've seen several movies that reminded me of that. And maybe one of the two movies have brought me back around to always think about my father and the issue of forgiveness. One was The Field of Dreams. Mm-hmm. And at the very end of the movie, when Ray is playing catch with his dad, when his dad comes back, that's sort of what I wish, that that my dad would come back and we could have that game of catch. Yeah. And in The Field of Dreams, when their whole line is, if you build it, he will come. For me, the he is not Shoeless Joe Jackson. For me, the he is Ray, the main protagonist, to come and realize and to extend forgiveness to his father. So when I first saw that movie back in 1989, it was a real gut check for me. Yeah. A year or so ago, I saw It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with about Mr. Rogers. And there was the reporter that was interviewing Mr. Rogers and basically saying, this guy's too nice. I mean, nobody can be this nice. How can he be this nice? And was showing Mr. Rogers and this fellow was going through a similar problem with his father. And I remember the whole issue that Mr. Rogers said, you just have to, learn accept what was good from your interaction, from your, in this case, my father, and then realize how I can improve from that going forward. So that's probably the biggest one, but I'll be honest, I vacillate back and forth on that. I mean, it's tough. And so it's, and I'm sure everyone has situations like that in their lives. So that's one of the things that I've learned, is that dealing with people, is that you sometimes have to understand that there's really a curtain up there. And sometimes it's their protective curtain. Mm-hmm. So my job, as best I can, if I'm being a good citizen, is sometimes, if I can, just gently peel back. And how can I help you? Mm-hmm. How can we work together? I'm here with you. What can I do to help? And that's what good citizens do. Related to that one, I just keep rambling, so cut me off whenever you need to.
Oh, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying this.
I remember when my parents divorced, and my father was really not a part of my life other than periodic visitation. And my mother always saying, I just want you to be happy. I just want you to be happy. And, you know, you can internalize that and just say, well, you know, to heck with everybody else. It's just up to me to be happy. And then when my first marriage ended in divorce, and my oldest son, I remember saying frequently, I just want you to be happy. And then I realized I think I have this backwards. What I want him to do, what I want both of my boys to do, and now my granddaughters, is to be good citizens, to care for others, to empathize for others, to understand others. And if they do that, they will be happy. So to me, happiness is a secondary thing. Now, you know, you don't hit nirvana just because you're nice to somebody, but it's a step along the way. I mean, it's, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Hopefully 4 steps forward, 1 step back. But you just keep working.
I love that. One thing I got to say about that, I've noticed when a lot of people say, I just want you to be happy. And one thing that kept playing on my mind every time that you kept on saying that, I always think the person that says it, are they happy? Are they really saying, I just want you to be happy? Or it's them saying to themselves, I just want to be happy. Because I find that when people say that, because I believe that when people say that, they themselves are not happy. And then they're protruding this negative environment or negative energy around them to the people that they care and love. And they're just saying, I just want you to be happy. Despite everything that's going around, I just want you to be happy. Despite how I talk to you and how I yell at you, I just want you to be happy. And that's what was playing in my mind when you mentioned that. You could have any thoughts on that, or I can keep going on.
Well, you know, in retrospect, if I look at what, you know, my mother with that, I think in many ways she was not happy.
Yes.
It was a difficult time. Our family was a family of means, but of fiscal means, not of mental means. So my mother was ostracized. You did not get divorced in our family, even if you had an abusive husband. So she did not have support from her mother. And so even though there was fiscal support, there was no mental support. So my mother had a very difficult time. Now she reached out to everyone she could. And I'd like to think sort of the positive things that I'm doing in my life are a reflection of what she taught me. But I also realize at times that she did it to an extreme, because that was her way of creating her internal satisfaction. If she could give people so much, that sometimes it was mental strength that she shared with people, but sometimes it was just goods, and that was too much. So I think she did have, and she had a lot of difficulties with some addiction to certain things, because she had a lot of problems with pain. She had, excuse me, chronic back problems throughout her life, and had a lot of pain issues. So I think there's probably something to what you say. I don't think it's a given that everybody says that is unhappy, but there might be some element it's overstating the issue.
I'll take that. One thing that you mentioned, again, I'm going back with your extensive history in the medical and physician practice and experience that you have, and relating it back to, as you mentioned, your father and the PTSD that he had, or possibly could have had during that time of World War II. And you're right on the sense that a lot of people, I'm going to say the word we, even though I wasn't born during that time, but we as citizens never really addressed those situations. Do you feel that current state is being affected by past mistakes of us, as in treating those that came from the war and how they treated their family? Do you believe that the effect of families nowadays, where we see a lot of trauma and tragedy within family, is a curse, in quotation, from the fathers and mothers that went to war in the wars in World War I and World War II, that they portrayed themselves towards that their family, as in the mothers and fathers of today's society, or grandparents of today's society, that have that effect on the mothers and fathers and how they're growing up and how they're supposed to react and be in a relationship. And I say that because you mentioned something like your mom was in a bad relationship, but to have a divorce was not something that she could have done.
Right.
So a lot of people stay in situations that are bad for them for the sake of saving face.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a slow, gradual change as best I can tell. I mean, I think you came back from World War II, and you just bucked up and did whatever. You were just glad to be back, and praise the Lord, you were part of the greatest generation, and we saved the world, and now we're going to give you the GI Bill. We're going to give you all these effects, and you can lead happy lives and go forward. Yet we ignored a great segment of our society, the African Americans that came back from the wars, and some other folks. But those people still sort of had the feeling like, I mean, as those people became parents and then grandparents, I don't understand what you're talking about, this PTSD. This is a new thing. I suspect they just subverted it. They just kept it inside to buck up and do what needed to be done. So I think I see a gradual the pendulum swinging to a greater understanding of the issue. Still not enough, because I don't think any of us can understand what's going on especially when you look at the suicide rate for returning veterans from the wars. It's just appalling. And so what what's going on, you just don't understand what's going on inside people's heads, and how we can reach out to them and help them.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting better, sort of a better realization, but I think we still have a long way to go. But some of the grandparents, I don't know this from personal experience, but I get the feeling that they're finally starting to come to grips with some of this. Now I understand that you really should get this out, because it leads to it poisons your relationships with your spouses and with your children and with your families. So it's important to get that out. And if appropriate, get counseling. Get away from the stigma of mental health being you're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I think that's one thing that society that we don't shed the light on, or the spotlight on, is mental health, especially with COVID happening. They're starting to realize the effect of COVID on people, the fact of isolation, the fact of wearing a mask, because now you're looking at, as you mentioned, is that mental health aspect of it. People are committing suicide. You see the increase of suicides, and the studies in regards to it in the past 18 months, suicide has been on the rise because of COVID and because of the isolation that happens because of the pandemic. We're not able to interact. You mentioned in this whole conversation about being a citizen of the world, it's hard to help the community if you can't see the community. It's hard to help yeah.
And unfortunately, what the pandemic exposed was several things. It tore open the Band-Aid on the ethnic disparities in our society. Since we see that the African American community and the Hispanic community is much greater affected with COVID for a variety of reasons. And I heard a great analogy, because everyone's always talking about, well, we're all in the same boat. No, not really. We're all in the same storm. Yeah. Each of us has different boats.
I like that.
Some folks have yachts. Some folks has a fishing boat. Some folks have a dinghy, and some folks have a canoe with holes in it. So we're all in the same storm, but the boats are very different, and the responses are very different. And to expect then everyone to respond the same way and feel the same way doesn't give it justice to the differences in our society.
I love that. I've never heard that before I've always heard we're all in the same boat, but I love that we're all in the same storm, but different boats. And I
Yep.
have to write that down and I have to preach about that one day because that is fantastic. I love that analogy because as soon as you said that, like when you said everyone's in the same boat, my thing was, okay, there's a big boat, everyone's in there, everyone thinks about that. We're all heading in and experiencing the same thing. But when you realize that it's not the boat, but we're just in the same storm, but everyone has a different boat. And the first thing that came to my mind before we even said yacht was a yacht. And I was thinking about a yacht. I was thinking about a tugboat. I was thinking about a rowboat. I was thinking about, I didn't realize, again, having the holes in those motorized vehicles or even a rowboat itself, that makes an impact because you can have a yacht and that could have holes in it. Hey, case in point, the freaking Titanic, for example, the unsinkable ship, for example, that was supposed to, save people and whatever with that. That's another story. But again, you see what happened in regards to all that. It's very interesting. It's very interesting what society we have grown, I'll say, from the past 100 years. I could see the improvement based off of 100 years up until today, but at the same time, we're not advancing as fast as we should be. And I believe things like mental health should be talked more about, things like how we could be a better citizen and around our community and neighborhoods has not been spoken about or touched based upon as much as it should be. We focus too much on how technology could help us to be better as humans or humanity overall, but we don't look at how technology can improve us as a whole. It's not a self improvement. It's more of a how can I gain to be better than the next person, and that's why I see technology advancing in that way. Because I remember back in the 90s, you had big boats which had 300 horsepower, but it moved at a snail. Now you have a car that's lightweight, 300 horses, looks fantastic, i.e. the Tesla, for example. Yeah, an advancement of technology. But what is that? Yes, it is electronic. Yes, it helps on emissions. But is that serving the community? Is that making your community safer? What's it doing to, for example, John down the street, which is struggling for groceries or putting food on his table because he lost his job because the factory closed down? Those questions are not being answered.
Yeah.
And I believe that, again, based off of what we're talking about today, we need to focus on those aspects. And it all starts with, as you mentioned, is how could we train and teach our kids? Because that's where it starts from. We have to train and teach our kids because they are the future, no matter how we look at it. Yes, we could have the imprint of it right now. We can make an imprint of it, but it's our kids that are going to be the effect of it. Their kids are the change of what the next generation and generations to become. And that's what starts with, if we could start by putting love and emphasizing love, emphasizing self-improvement in a way that, hey, we are citizens, and self-improvement on look at how we can improve internally instead of externally improvements, and showing off what we have, so our material things, but we're showing, hey, we have the knowledge, understanding, and wisdom to go about showing each other love and improvement and being a product of society, in the sense that we are giving society a better chance of surviving, a better chance of creating a more safer community. Those are the things which I think we're lacking as a whole.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Excellent. Any last words that you'd like to say?
Well, I mean, if anybody's interested in some of what we've talked about, my website, mychildrenschildren.com, has a ongoing blog and has information about the books, if anybody's so interested.
That is awesome. Do you do any streaming or live streaming interviews or stuff like that? Or
I have not yet.
I think you would honestly benefit from that. When we were talking, I'm going to send you one of my previous podcasts. I would love for you to have a listen to it, because I think it will, I'm not going to say help you. I do not want to say this, but hopefully that person talks the same thing that you're talking about, is about how to parent with love. And that's something that, again, that we're missing.
Yeah.
We try to parent our kids, not really with love. I'll say we do love them and we do parent them with love, but it's a different type of love. It's hey, yes, you're doing a good job, but when you do wrong, I will punish you, in a sense. But the biggest thing as well is, how are we able to maintain and sustain that love, and show them, and sorry, instill that love within them, therefore they could show love with each other. Because I honestly believe that kids at a young age, let's say the age of 6 or 7, younger than that, they are kids, they're exploring, they're loving life, they see the world in a different point of view. And around that age, you can start seeing the injection of the parents within those kids, and they start to manifest themselves, not how they were before, but manifest themselves in how their parents are.
I will leave you with a final thought that people often talk to me, how do I discipline my child? How do I punish my child? And I don't like the word punishment.
Mm.
And I remind people that the word discipline, the root word for discipline is disciple, which means to teach. So anytime you have an experience that you don't think was good from the child, that the point of discipline should be a teaching experience. And the I don't approve of corporal punishment, because it sends the wrong message. That you've exhibited that when you're angry, it's okay to hit somebody. So how does the child not pick up on that also? So discipline is a teaching experience, and whether that's verbal or in terms of comforting. Now, and the other thing is, you never tell your child they're a bad child. What they did might be bad, but you love your child unconditionally. But that doesn't mean you love their behavior. So you have to separate the two.
Robert, it's been a pleasure and a treat. I love this.
Well, thank you, David. It's been my pleasure.